Namaskar. Prayers for your and your family members' safety and health. In this video session, we are going to start with a new chapter. That is chapter number 2. The name of the chapter is We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together. This is class 11th book Hornbill. Let us understand why in the title it is said that they are not afraid to die. In the condition that they are together, where are they? Why is there a reason to get afraid? To get these answers, let us read the chapter. In the beginning of the chapter, we are asked to notice the expressions in the text and we should infer their meanings from the context. So here is a list of those terms, expressions. Expression number 1. Honing our seafaring skills. Number 2. Ominous silence. Number 3. Mayday calls. Number 4. Pinpricks in the vast ocean. And number 5. Atoll sled head. So as we read this chapter, try to find out these expressions and also try to infer the meaning from the text given. Let us read the chapter. In July 1976, my wife Mary, son Jonathan, 6 years of age, daughter Suzanne, 7 years of age, and I set sail from Plymouth, England, to duplicate the round-the-world voyage made 200 years earlier by Captain James Cook. So the narrator, along with his family, in the year 1976, set sail in the ocean, and the plan was to circumnavigate the world, wanted to go around the world in a sea voyage. It was earlier done 200 years ago by Captain James Cook, and he wants to duplicate or copy this path in the sea and want to experience the adventure that Captain James Cook had experienced 200 years ago. For the longest time, Mary and I, a 37-year-old businessman, had dreamt. The narrator is 37-year-old businessman. He says, for the longest time, Mary and I, a 37-year-old businessman, had dreamt of sailing in the wake of the famous explorer. The famous explorer here is Captain James Cook. So inspired by this Captain James Cook, they had been planning to go on a voyage around the world, and for the past 16 years, we had spent all our leisure time honing our seafaring skills in British waters. So for the past 16 years, they had been practicing their seafaring skills, that is the skills of going on a voyage on the sea. And they were doing it in the British waters, means the sea around the British country, that is Britain. Our boat, Waywalker, a 23-meter, 30-ton, wooden-hulled beauty, had been professionally built, and we had spent months fitting it out and testing it in the roughest weather we could find. And apart from getting prepared for the past 16 years and not enjoying their leisure time, they had been practicing in the sea. Apart from that, they also had ordered a special boat. The name of the boat was Waywalker, and it was a 23-meter long boat weighing 30 tons, wooden, and it was a beautiful boat. It was professionally built, and they had spent months fitting it out and testing it in the toughest and roughest weather that they could find, to make sure that when they are going on the voyage around the world, any kind of storm would not affect or destroy the boat. So they had been doing this work of preparing themselves for a very long time. Our boat, Wave Walker, was ready. The first leg of our planned 3 year, one leg, 5,000 kilometers journey passed pleasantly as we sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. So they started their journey, the first part of it. So therefore it is written the first leg of the planned 3 year journey, and the journey was how many kilometers long? It was one leg, 5,000 kilometers long. And the first part of the journey really very pleasantly was experienced by them, and it was from Britain to Africa, to the southern tip of Africa, that is Cape Town. So from Europe to Africa, it was a very safe journey. There, before heading to east, that is towards India, we took on two crewmen, that is an American, Larry Vigil, and a Swiss, Herb Segler. So two more members in the crew were added. Two new crew members were added. This was to help us tackle one of the world's roughest seas, that is the Southern Indian Ocean. On our second day, out of Cape Town, we began to encounter strong gales. For the next few weeks, they blew continuously. Gales did not worry me, but the size of the waves was alarming, up to 15 meters, as high as our main mast. So from Britain or from Europe, they had started towards Africa. Then they reached Cape Town, where two more crew members were added, and from Cape Town, that is the southern tip of Africa, they turned eastwards, that is towards India. And on the second day, after they had left Cape Town, they started seeing huge waves, and the waves were 15-meter high as their main mast, which was in the center of the boat, and there were strong winds blowing, and the waves were huge. Still, the author says that the gales did not worry me, that is, the strong winds did not worry me, but the size of the waves had little concern. There was a little concern in the minds of the author related to the size of the waves. December 25th found us 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Despite atrocious weather, we had a wonderful holiday, complete with a Christmas tree. New Year's Day saw no improvement in the weather, but we reasoned that it had to change soon. And it did change, but for the worse. So it was December 25th, that is the Christmas time, and they had left Cape Town, and now the distance between Cape Town and where they were was 3,500 kilometers. And in the Southern Ocean, that is the Indian Ocean, the weather was very treacherous. The weather was atrocious. It was not favorable for the sea voyage. However, they had wonderful celebrations of Christmas and New Year, and they were hoping that the weather would change. And the writer mentions that the weather changed, but the change was not for better, it was for worse. That is, The weather, the winds, and the waves, they all changed into something very disturbing. The weather changed for the worse. At dawn on January 2nd, the waves were gigantic. We were sailing with only a small storm jib and were still making 8 knots. Here, the author says that the waves were very huge, gigantic waves, and their boat in comparison was very small. They had, they had been sailing with only a small storm jib, and even the protection for the times of danger was very small, and they were going at a very slow speed of 8 knots. Knots is the unit to measure the distance in the sea. As the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless, enormous seas rolling towards us, and the screaming of the wind and spray was painful to the ears. So, as they move further, the weather deteriorated, the waves became huge, and the waves also moved the ship or the boat very strongly, and on the four sides, in all the directions, the sea was endless. They could not see any piece of land. They were in the middle of the sea. As the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless, enormous seas rolling towards us, and the screaming of the wind and spray was painful to the ears. To slow the boat down, we dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy mooring rope in a loop across the stern. So, strong jib is a part of the ship which is put along with the sail. This has a better control in the stormy sea. So, they did that as a safety mechanism. Then we double lashed everything, went through our life raft drill, attached the lifelines, donned oilskins and life jackets, and waited. So, since this sea was stormy, they made all the necessary precautions according to the requirement to face the danger. That is what they have listed here. Means they were ready to face the stormy sea. The first indication of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m., that is the evening time, with an ominous silence. The wind dropped, and therefore the ominous silence, evil silence, and the sky immediately grew dark. It was turning into night. Then came a growing roar, and an enormous cloud towered aft of the ship. With horror, I realized that it was not a cloud, but a wave like no other I had ever seen. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves, with a frightful breaking crest. So, a huge wave came towards the ship. It was double the height of the other waves. The roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought that we might ride over it. So the waves were coming, and the ship was almost going to overturn. But then a tremendous explosion shook the deck. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. My head smashed into the wheel, and I was aware of flying overboard and sinking below the waves. I accepted my approaching death, and as I was losing consciousness, I felt quite peaceful. So suddenly, the boat was hit with something, and the narrator uh, went into the water. He was hit in the head. He says that my head smashed into the wheel, and then gradually he became unconscious. But it's very strange that he says that in this condition, when he saw that his death is approaching, he felt quite peaceful. This is something very strange that he writes here. Unexpectedly, my head popped out of the water a few meters away. Wave walker was near capsizing, that is overturning, going upside down. Her masts almost horizontal position instead of vertical. Then a wave hurled her upright. The boat once again became upright. My lifeline jerked taut. That is because of this effect, he was pulled towards the boat because there was a lifeline which on one end was tied on his waist and the other end was with the boat. I grabbed the guard rails and sailed through the air into wave walker's main boom. So he was hurled and he went towards the boat. Once again smashed. Subsequent waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll. It was like he felt like a rag doll which is being kicked from one place to another. My left ribs crackled, so there was fracture in the ribs. My mouth filled with blood and broken teeth. Somehow I found the wheel, lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on. Even in this condition, he tried to control the boat. He tried to control his ship. With this, let us end the session. Read the chapter further. In our next video lesson, we will continue from here. Till then, bye. God bless you. May peace be with you.